Okay, we're going to the Birthplace. Right here. Visitor parking there straight ahead. There's the church up on the hill that we just went by the location of it. East Tupelo, the poor side of town back in Elvis's time.
See, there's reef also. Got my finger.
Parking lot here, and don't seem to be very many people here this morning. We're kind of early. It's only 9:20 and opened up at 9. There's a replica of the car that they traveled to Memphis in, that old Plymouth car there. We're going to get out and walk around and go to the gift shop. One of Elvis's childhood friends, Becky Martin, wrote this as my father owned a large frame grocery store at the corner of East Main and Lake Streets, and we lived just behind the store at 106 Lake Street. Elvis's father, Vernon, and his uncle Vester, Elvis's uncle Vester, of course, worked in the grocery store for a short time during the 40s. The Presleys lived on the north side of the highway, East Main, and Elvis attended Lawhorn School on the south side. Elvis's friends walked to school, and my brothers and I joined them after they crossed the highway. Elvis and I were in Mrs. Oleta Grimes' 5th grade class together, where we memorized dozens of poems and several historical documents like the Gettysburg Address. At a short chapel time each morning, and Elvis would sometimes sing "Oh Shep" or "God Bless My Daddy." He was pretty shy and not mischievous at school. Children from either side of the highway were not allowed to cross the street without parents, and boys and girls didn't play together then. But sometimes Mama would send us girls to the bridge to get my brothers when we got slipped to go swimming in the creek, which would be Mud Creek right over there where we went. Elvis was often with them. My brothers usually got a whipping for that. I don't know how Elvis was punished, but I know that he had slipped off too. That's when they were talking about slipping off the creek down there through Reese's Woods or whatever to go swimming, and sometimes skinny dipping with the boys. And then the girls had their time there where they either swam or played games or whatever. There's all kinds of historic things Elvis's friends wrote about him. There's one that was a student at Milam High School. I'd saved money for 3 years to buy a bike. One day Elvis Presley, when my classmates asked to ride, after he had ridden off for several minutes, he asked me if I would trade my bike for his guitar. I told him I wouldn't trade. He asked me several times more, but I kept my bike. If we had traded, Elvis would have had the bike, and I would have had the guitar that I couldn't play and likely never would have been able to play it. I often wonder what the result might have been if we had traded. That's Jackie Prather, another childhood friend. Another one here is Lando Lee. They were classmates at Milam Junior High, and they were all poor, as mentioned, and whatever. They weren't really hungry, but they were fine during hometown programs. Elvis, Billy Welch, and I sometimes sang songs like "Down by the Riverside," "You Are My Sunshine" together, and Elvis sang "Oh Shep" by himself. His bringing guitar to school was quite unusual. In those times, the guitar was considered hicky and accompanied what people in the South called hillbilly music. He was encouraged and praised by Mrs. Camp, our homeroom teacher, who could say what a lasting effect she had on that poor shy boy when she asked him to stand in front of the class and sing. That's Lando Lee's memory. Wrote that Elvis and I became friends at Milam Junior High and often rode my bike from North Church Street to his home on North Green to play or spend the night. When I spent the night, we'd often tell ghost stories till we were both scared. Mrs. Presley would tell us to not stay awake late. She need not be worried because we were too scared to stay awake after they'd go to sleep. Sometimes we'd get up real early and go with Mr. Presley on his IP McCarty run. One time when we were unloading the grocery down in Palmetto, I pitched a box of cartridges to Elvis. He looked terrified and screamed because he was afraid it might blow up. His daddy got a big laugh out of it. At school on Friday, we had homeroom programs. Sometimes Elvis would pick his guitar and sing. One time, 2 other boys, Elvis and I, got a harmonica quartet featuring Elvis on guitar. He couldn't play the harmonica, but he clowned around with it. One of Elvis's friends was in the band and wanted Elvis to join. He went with Elvis to see the band director. When asked what he wanted to play, Elvis said he'd like to play the guitar. The band director replied, "We can't march with the guitar," so Elvis stuck with his guitar and didn't get in the band. As far as I ever knew, Elvis couldn't read music, but as a natural musician, he had the talent and ability long before he came to Milam. So he was playing when he was very small then, if that's the case. The only trouble that I remember Elvis being involved in happened one day just as a bell rang. to end recess. Elvis usually wore overalls and a shirt to school every day. I guess his shirt looked old and worn. And a boy whose father owned a shirt factory in town said, "If you'll let me, I'll bring you some shirts." Elvis was offended and lit into him, shoving and pushing. The school principal broke it up and took both of them to the office. He gave them warning to make fighting, but didn't punish them. So it shows you that he had pride. Even though he was poor, he didn't want to take any handouts or whatever from that more wealthy kid whose father owned the shirt factory. Elvis is okay in his old clothes, and he didn't want anybody to notice or say anything about it because that offended him, that you would even say anything about it, even though that was an offer to bring him something better. Which nowadays people would do that just to mess with the person instead of being sincere about it. This is what Gladys said when Gladys bought the guitar for him at Tupelo Hardware. This came from Mr. Bobo, who sold the guitar. You just take that home with you and learn to play it. You might be famous someday. Now that's kind of ironic that a salesman would say that when Elvis got the guitar. He told him he might be famous someday. This is Oleta Grimes, 5th grade teacher who had read in those other stories there. There's something nice about everyone. There's everything nice about Elvis. This is from Reverend Frank Smith, who's a pastor there. Whether the First Assembly of God where Elvis attended, he also helped Elvis learn guitar, as we read that other marker. But it says, "I was an evangelist and came to Tupelo about 1947 to preach at East Tupelo Assembly of God Church. While I was preaching there, I met Corey and Randall, and we were later married. I became pastor of the church with a congregation of about 30 members. Vernon, Gladys, and Elvis came to church with their kinfolks. Sale, or Sally, however that's pronounced, and Andy Presley. We were all friends. Corey's mother, Amelia, taught Elvis his Sunday school class. He was just a regular little boy, and she paid no special attention to him because he was well behaved in church. The church choir wasn't a designated group, so anybody could come up front to sing. When Elvis was about 10 or 11, he began singing occasionally in church. Magdalene Morgan played the piano, and Elvis would sing with her. I remember Elvis going with us to the Morgans' home to eat lunch on a Sunday after church. He made a picture of Magdalene and Elvis together that afternoon. I played the guitar and taught several boys, including Elvis, to play. I showed him a few chords to get him started. After his family moved into town, I walked from East Tupelo to North Green Street to help him play. That was a long ways from here. North Green Street is way, way across town. If he walked all the way over there, he was pretty dedicated, because that's probably a couple of miles at least, maybe even farther.
Yeah.
At that young age, neither his voice nor his playing was particularly outstanding, but he was always interested and always polite. Later, he used a book to teach himself to play. His voice was a gift from God. Many have copied after him. He copied after nobody. His movements, his singing gyrations over his way. They didn't come to the church or other singers. He just kept at what he had begun in East Tupelo and did it his way. Reverend Frank Smith. Here's others. Guy Harris, a friend, the type of guy everybody liked, real honest, humble. He was just a real good, what I call country boy. Cousin by marriage, dear friend of Gladys, Andy Presley. Elvis never forgot his raisin. Roland Tyndale, school friend at Milam. Elvis would pick his guitar and sing, tell us one day he was going to be on the Grand Ole Opry. We were all very doubtful of that, but we didn't say anything to him about it. Billy Presley.
Billy.
Cousin, 2 years younger than Elvis. I wasn't always included with the other boys, but sometimes we played together in the woods behind Kelly Street. For kids like we were, Elvis was good at building stuff. I especially remember a swing he made from an apple crate. And the 1936 tornado left everyone in Tupelo scared to death of storms. We had about the only storm house in the neighborhood, so Vernon, Gladys, and Elvis would come to our house when the weather got real bad. I'll never forget one Christmas when Elvis and his mother and daddy were at our house. We had an open fireplace for heat, and Elvis laid some firecrackers down on the hearth. A while later, a coal popped out of the fire and lit one of the firecrackers, and that went off. It nearly scared us all to death. And Gladys scolded him real bad, but didn't whip him. Billy Presley, cousin. Elvis always paid his debts. This was a story that appeared in Lee County Courier on May 5th, 2016. Some dates mentioned in this article are the author's approximation. When Elvis was a young boy and needed to get medicine for Gladys, the closest drugstore was downtown. TXE Rexall Drugstore was located in the northwest corner of Spring and Main Streets, a block west of Tupelo Hardware Company. P.K. Thomas Sr. owned and operated the store. Mr. Thomas would allow customers who could not pay for the medication at the time the visit to have it and pay for it later. This helped poor families, including Elvis's family. Mr. Thomas's grandson, Ed West, tells of the young Elvis who did not forget this kindness shown to his family. It also tells of the generous Elvis who repaid the debt with interest after the 1956 Tupelo concert. Elvis the boy was raised to be Elvis the man of integrity. And there's the newspaper article, which I won't read all that, but it'll be on the video. All right, this says Elvis's Secret Gift is an article that appeared in the July 1960 issue of Movie Mirror magazine. Elvis's friend Earl Greenwood submitted the article about Elvis's generosity in using the money he earned at the Mississippi-Alabama Fair and Dairy Show to create the Elvis Presley Youth Center. The article mentions his charities and fans who benefited from Elvis's kindness. Everyone seems to know that Colonel Tom Parker, Elvis's manager, asked $25,000 for a television appearance, but few people realize that Elvis often appears on local shows just to help friends of his who are MCs and disc jockeys. He receives nothing for these appearances. And all of Tupelo and Memphis are proud of him. I just wish everyone knew Elvis I know. He's a man anyone would be proud to call his friend. Elvis was a true friend, and there's a copy of the magazine article, The Secret Gift, and the picture also. The mural to the left over here, this very long mural, shows Elvis at all times of his life. In the tornado, downtown, Gladys and Vernon, at the 1956 show there at Fair Park, and a lot of other things. And the mural on the wall to the left is created by Betty Harper, and here's a picture of her in this frame up here. Betty's the official artist for Elvis Presley Enterprises, and Betty has created several t-shirts designed for the Elvis Presley Birthplace. My first love will always be faces. No matter the lifestyle or the background, each subject I draw has a story to tell. I use pencil paints and more recently technology to capture an intimate glimpse into the life of a person, to see a side of them that most people don't. I make art not so that people can see an image, but so they can be transported to a different time and place. In similar fashion of my life, I want the viewer to experience a new environment, not simply admire artistic talent. Renowned for her work in the Elvis Presley world, in 2012, Betty created an exhibit that featured 10,000 portraits. 50 plus years with Elvis was on display at the Center for Southern Folklore in Memphis. Here at the Elvis Presley Birthplace and Musicians Hall of Fame and Museum in Nashville, Tennessee, we thank Betty for adding the innocence of Elvis' experience of the Elvis Presley birthplace. And there's her website, bettyharper.com. Very beautiful work. There's even Mississippi Slim up there in a picture of him which I haven't seen there at the radio station that was in the courthouse. Elvis, when he was 10, when he performed the first time at the Fair Park, when he sang "Oh Chef" when he was a child. There he is with the guitar. Johnny's Drive-In is mentioned, picture of that. Shake Rag that we also visited, that's what it looked like with the shacks where that was all torn down due to the conditions of it. There's a picture of what it looked like back in those days, as there's nothing left there. Cotton, of course, garment factory where Gladys worked. This now the antique mall relics. What it looked like in 1948 when they left. There's the car. The Sun Records. Other images, the Citizen State Bank. This is from the 56 show with Vernon Gladys, been colorized, of course. Elvis maturing. Good use of it. It is a nice mural, very nice mural. This is the grounds, the outside of the birthplace, part of the large park here. And the sidewalks, benches, and all that. We're gonna go walk up to the top of the hill. Good video up there. And there's a lot of other things. We got the little tour guide booklet here that'll tell us what everything is. So we're heading up the top of the hill now. It's pretty steep up here, so if you come, you better come early in this time of year because it's going to be hot here, and we're going to take care of that early today before it does get too heated up. Elvis was supposedly played on this hill when he was a child up here, climbing this hill in the back of the birthplace, so you can imagine what he played up there, King of the Hill probably, with his friends. They probably wrestled up there. You can only imagine. That's what we would have done. It says in later years, this overlook became one of Elvis's favorite places to visit. It's been developed to the enjoyment of his friends and fans. It's a huge tribute to his artistry and the contribution in music that he made to the world. So they came back here to overlook his childhood experience here. Birthplace would be over here. This is that youth center, the big building, but the birthplace would be in this area, right in there somewhere. I can actually see our car in the parking lot. So from the parking lot, you just keep walking and you'll run into the car. Old Plymouth is right there, also to the left, just away from the parking lot. But it was all looking the park here. There's some monuments back here. And over here to the left, this is a wooded area. And this is probably what it looked like back in Elvis's time with all these woods. The boys probably had a trail through there. That's what I would have done as a child. On the other side would have been Reese's Woods. I believe that was the name over there to Mud Creek. So this is probably what they went through to get to the creek to go swimming over there and hide and sneak their way back home. Probably through something like this with some trails that somebody had made. Really, really wooded and bushy. Oh, yeah. So here's the statues up on top of the hill. The little boy Elvis with his guitar, and then the mature Elvis with his costume there. Show you the size of this statue here, how big it is. And this is overlooking the birthplace right here where we're at. This is the highest point here on the hill. Now looking down up there, you can actually see the old Plymouth car in the garage down there that's running straight, and then the parking lot just to the right. So that would be the right close to the entrance to the birthplace museum would be right there. Gift shop and all that. Okay, here's Elvis at 11. We got his guitar, which everybody knows the story by now. We're being another video. Anybody been singing in the Assembly of God Church? The pastor, Brother Frank Smith, taught him how to play guitar. His first chords were D, A, and E, which were the keys for Oh Shep, the song he sang in 1945 to win second place, fifth place. It says second there, was actually fifth place, I believe, in the talent contest when he was 10 years old. And then mentioned the Shake Rag community, where he learned the different types of music, the blues and gospel there. Becoming Elvis, this is a statue here from the child to the mature Elvis, the performer. And here's the information about that, about the two statues. Becoming, they illustrate the transformation of Elvis boy to Elvis the entertainer. Each figure represents a slice of life of the same man born on common soil in East Tupelo. Statue set to the highest point of the property as homage to his beginnings. This is 11 feet tall, the life-size statue, or whatever it says, but it's bigger, of course. The entertainer bigger than life, so fitting contrast to one of the greatest, or it says one of the greatest, no, the greatest culture icon of the 20th century, in my opinion. As a young boy, Elvis and friends would run the hills and hollows of East Tupelo. Imagine that one of those days Elvis had picked up a guitar and up to overlook this quiet space up here. He might have been up here singing Old Shepherd, practicing up here on this hill for later. It says on this wall here. His hair was mussed. One sock had a hole in it. Elvis Presley's family poverty. Sits on a milk crate strumming his guitar looking toward downtown Tupelo. Perhaps it was here that Elvis, guitar in hand, first began to dream the dream of a better life. His dream was realized in ways far beyond his youth imagination. The overskilled statue of Elvis the Entertainer represents the finale. One of his great performances, arms outstretched, cape flowing, his head tilted skyward, signifying the end of his performance, but also symbolizing possibly the end of his life. Elvis became a larger-than-life personality with a revolutionary influence on music worldwide, yet he's always maintained his humble spirit in keeping true to his roots in East Tupelo. Elvis' meteoric rise to fame was fueled by his natural musical talent as well as his photogenic appearance and magnetic personality, all amazing gifts that lifted him onto stage and screen and crowned him the king. He scored his first #1 single, recorded in 1956 with Heartbreak Hotel, and it went on to chart 17 more top hits. He's been inducted to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, the Country Music Hall of Fame, and Gospel Music Association of Gospel Music's Hall of Fame. Even his signature stage apparel had star appeal, as the eagle-themed jumpsuit on his statue will attest. Worn in 1973 for his Aloha from Hawaii concert, Elvis chose the red, white, and blue eagles symbolize America to its global audience. This is the first concert by a single entertainer to be broadcast live by satellite to millions worldwide. I've even saw that it said there was 1 billion people actually watching that concert. It's a star live from the stars. The dynamic combination of talent, charisma, and luck propelled a poor young East Tupelo boy to the royalty as the king of rock and roll, and it's got 18 #1 hits, top 10 hits 38, top 30 hits 85, and the weeks #1 was 80. But in record sales, that doesn't cover that, and that's where he topped in record sales, but it's not on that. We're going to be headed back down here in a minute from the highest part down back, probably go to the gift shop first, and then go in the Birthplace home for too long. I was born back in 35 when being poor was a way of life. Back when the world turned so slow. Back when I was a little boy in Tupelo. Daddy worked hard, but it wasn't enough, but our little home was filled with love. And we went to church to save our soul. When I was a little boy in Tupelo. There's a pond down here that says Reflections. Fans are invited to pause for moments of quiet rest amid the beauty of nature. This peaceful garden offers a time to reflect on Elvis's boyhood, the early years of the journey that made him the amazing man he became. Perhaps reflection on the first 13 years of one's own life will bring to mind families, communities, special individuals, and other early influences that have shaped your life. Walking downhill from the pond here. So this is where the water's coming from, where this big pond running down the step to. I can't remember how it goes. There's your locks on the wire there. This bridge over troubled waters.
Like a bridge over troubled water.
I will lay me down like a bridge over troubled waters. I will lay me down in the sea.